Sure makes you look taller.
Great, welcome back to the House Healthcare Committee. It is still Wednesday, April 12th. And we are continuing with S37. And today we have, is it Wesley, right? Wesley.
Yeah, Wesley.
Wesley Pitcher and Lance Pitcher in father, son, to talk to us about their story with some of the topics we are having here today, specifically on the gender affirming care. So the floor is yours. I need you both to just introduce yourself for the record so that when someone listens, they can tie the voice to a name. And then whoever wants to start or however you want to choreograph it.
I am Wesley Pitcher.
I am Lance Pitcher.
Do you want to go first?
No, the floor is yours.
Okay. So hello everyone. My name is Wes. I go by Wes. You don't have to call me Wesley. It's
Okay.
formal. I live in Essex Junction, Vermont. Obviously, this is my father, and I'm here to talk to you guys about, my transition. So for me, it started relatively young when I realized that I hated wearing dresses. I mean, hated. It felt on my body. It's just so uncomfortable. I also just hated every other part of being a woman, which was really unfortunate because I just wanted to fit in so bad. And it was really, really hard growing up to fit in when you kind of hate everything about yourself. And none of that really clicked until maybe I was around 13 when I started realizing maybe this isn't right. Maybe there's something going on that's different. And so I had my friends call me Avery for a little bit, but that still didn't fit. And it felt wrong and uncomfortable because there was a lot of judgment around it and people weren't always willing to do it. Not speaking of my family, but of my friends in my middle school at the time. It was just an odd period where people didn't understand it. And I didn't even understand it. And it wasn't until high school that I started to actually see people like me be okay with being themselves, that I felt that I was represented and that I felt that I was heard, even though I had never even spoken to these people. I had just seen them and I had seen the way that they live and that they could live and be happy and comfortable. And when I turned 16, I realized that it was probably time to uncover these parts of myself. And I turned 16, my birthday is November 24th, so middle of the school year. So I thought that was too early. It wasn't right. I was still wanting to play softball. I love sports, so I couldn't give that up just yet, but I knew that it was coming. And so after my softball season ended, end of my sophomore year going into my junior year, I finally decided to come out in late June as transgender, as a transgender male. And I only received support from my friends. It was obviously very difficult for my family to comprehend this change as only knowing me as this one person for so long. And it was hard. Everyone kind of struggled a little bit, and that was okay. I went into it trying to remember that these people love me and they will only ever love me no matter what. And all of them pretty heavily put that on as soon as I told them. It was met with obviously confusion too, why wasn't this sooner? Or, well, what's your name now? What pronouns do we use? And it was a really hard process for all of us, but I'm trying to tell you guys that this didn't happen overnight. This was not like, oh my gosh, I'm trans now. No, this was a process that had taken so long and had so much pain attached to it that it just finally came at a good point in my life where it felt comfortable enough. And so then after that, I'm still in therapy. And once I had come out and people started using the right pronouns and the name Wes, it started to feel more comfortable. I started to feel like myself, but there was something missing. And that was the affirming care that I now have the privilege to receive today. And I call it a privilege because those in other states do not have the privilege to have what I have today. And so I'm so honored that I live in the state of Vermont where I have that privilege. And it was not an easy process. This was also a process that didn't happen overnight. It was therapy, it was meetings, it was working with UVM very closely, being super connected and getting all the information that we needed from them. My parents were very heavily involved. And so after a lot of that process had been through and I was told, you can start on this date, start my testosterone on this date. It's so much excitement from my friends, my family, all my loved ones, my teachers, those who respected me and knew me personally. And after I started testosterone in February of, I believe, 2022. Yeah, 2022, February 8th, same day I got my driver's license. It was a huge day. I finally, for once in my life, felt like myself. And there are little pieces that we can take away here and there where I start to feel more, but that right there saved my life. I cannot stress that enough. Without this care, I would not be here today. I would not be here at all. I have only ever struggled with this. And it has been so, so hard. And it has been hard on my family and my loved ones. And so I'm so happy to be here today to argue that this is the most important thing for the trans youth of the state of Vermont and the trans youth around the world. I'm here in front of you today as a person, a human being, looking at all of you right now and telling you that this is what people need. This process is an instant. People just don't get these hormones instantaneously. This is not something that is brainwashing your children. I'm not trying to brainwash you like some people try and say I am. I'm just a human being, just like all of you, and I want to be happy, and I want to be healthy. And at some point, I want to get married and have kids, and I want to live my life. I want to retire and do all of the things that I'm supposed to be able to do. And in order to do that, I need this care. Without this care, I cannot continue to live my life happily. And it is so unfortunate that that is the case. And so many times I think to myself, why me? Why was this the way it had to be? And it just was, and it was the hand that I was dealt. And sometimes I think it's unfortunate. And as I sit here today, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I get to argue for kids just like me, all across the state of Vermont and all around the world. I want you to hear my words and take them and just think for a moment about what I'm telling you. If you take this care away from kids like me, you are killing so many youth, and it is so sad. And it is so unfortunate to see the things that are unfolding across the United States right now. It's time and time again, I see people just like me in so much pain and so much agony because they cannot have what I have. I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful to be here today. And all I want you guys to know is that without this, myself and thousands of other kids would not be alive. This is so crucial to so many people. This is important to my family. This is important to me and thousands of other families and thousands of other kids. And I just can't stress that enough. I also can't stress enough that those who have helped me along the way, the University of Vermont and my surgeon, Alexandria Schmidt, working at Lake Mountain Plastic Surgery, who's going to do my top surgery in May. I cannot thank them enough. They are single-handedly making my life better and making change to so many other people in the state of Vermont. Penalizing them would be the worst thing to ever happen. I understand it's hard. It's a really hard choice to make when there are kids that choose to detransition. And I know that that is a difficult thing to come to terms with, but some don't. Some do and some don't. And the amount that do is pretty low. And the amount that don't is extremely high. And taking that away from those kids that really do need this care, it should be criminal at that. I think that is all I have to say.
Thank you very much for sharing that story.
Can I have some of yourselves?
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being here. Again, my name is Lance Pitcher, resident of Westford, Vermont. I think I've been there for 15, maybe 17 years now. From what it's worth, I'm a transplant to the state of Vermont. I moved here in 2000. Wes's mother is a fifth generation Vermonter, so don't hold that against him. In fact, if there's anyone struggling with their identity in the room right now, it's probably me, right? So let's just be clear where the real crisis is. No, I say that because I'm a member of my community. I love my community. I was raised to really appreciate, honor, and participate in community. I'm an Eagle Scout, which also kind of like led to that, which is why like I'm kind of honored to be here. Not even kind of, I am honored to be here. And again, thank you for your time as representatives and what you do for a job. I'll pull you out of the ditch. I'll do that as a community service, but like I'm not going to come down to the State House and do this day to day. As you listen to Wes, I heard him when he said, he wants you to take a moment. I would say like that moment might go for a long time. Or it should. You should stretch that out in your mind. What I can offer you are I'm not in healthcare. The healthcare system alone is very confusing for me.
For us too, don't worry.
Which is one of the reasons I do really appreciate the services that have been available to the family, to Wes and to myself. Not only has it been helpful, I mean, as you hear him talking about it, it is saving his life. And that's not sort of a metaphor we're using, all right? This is something that, as Wes was saying, prior to this, I didn't think I was going to have him I didn't think I'd see him turn 20. And I won't get into the details, but like, I'm not just being overly dramatic about this. We're talking about survival in terms of what I had seen. It really opened my eyes and what opened my eyes was not only the depression and what I was seeing a child struggle through, was that as soon as he clarified with us and identified that like I am a male, I want to be called Wes, we started down that road. And I want to defend our family. His mother and I both, I mean, it's not, I didn't do the dishes is something you expect to hear when you walk through the door. I am a male, please call me Wes. That's, a little different. We weren't upset, but it was kind of like oh. However, I'm going to tell you right now, never surprises. We kind of looked at each other, Brenda and I did. We weren't in the same room, so that is kind of a little metaphor. But we looked at each other, and honestly, it was just kind of you surprised? No. And that's not because of like, oh, this is Wes doing his thing. This was because, and I will say, what became hard at that point as a parent was the months that I know I had to come to terms with the idea that I had to be very careful not to face my own guilt for how early I saw it in the first place. And that part has always been not a struggle, but that has always been something that's in my mind. I'm very careful not to beat myself up or say that I was a bad father or a bad parent and I didn't live up to this kid. But I did realize, with hindsight being 20/20, as we say, we use that. This goes back to kindergarten or before. The subtle things that at the time was just a tomboy, this, that, the things we just sort of brush off like, well, a phase or this or that. But as I started looking back with this new revelation, I really started seeing, wow, we saw it back then. Don't warp your mind on worrying about when we need to introduce gender identity to a child. I'm not here to browbeat anyone to saying like, you need to do it differently, because I understand there's a lot of hopes and dreams and cultural norms that are, the loom that we have been weaving this fabric in is thousands of years old. I understand you just start pulling at one of those threads and it's not like you got to be careful with it, but I would say like those threads are deep. And so I'm just asking, I'm not here to tell you that like, oh, you painted the room pink when your daughter was born. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm saying I've thought about it now as I've looked at it and been like, dang, how far did I see this? How much of his struggle was me? Thanks. Again, I'm not here to browbeat or even get too guilty about what I did and didn't do. I'm just using that to point out that from my perspective as a parent watching my child, this was something that we saw marching along. His identity now, as soon as he did, the change was incredible. The confidence in which I saw my son walk was night and day. In a week, everything was different. I started sleeping knowing that I don't think, let me make sure I get it right, Wes is going to kill himself tonight. Because I just see it, I could tell. I didn't have that luxury before. So him coming out was one thing. I'm just going to say, from my perspective as a parent, I was not expecting this in life. No one raised me to be prepared for this. So as he did, it was the natural progression that I saw. Again, as anyone that's a parent in this room knows, as you look at your children, like there's just something different there, and I was looking at my child and I could tell that they're right. Everything's good with them. What was wild, and why we're kind of here today, is that equally then I thought, like, now what do we do? What happens next? Right? I wasn't prepared for this. I know at one point when Wes was 11 and he had first come out, like, as this process was going, and okay, you're a lesbian, like you're attracted to women, like, okay, that was the first thing. I even asked, he was 11 years old, and I was like, is this like a gender that, like, at the time, Wes was like, no, I'm cool with it, whatever. Like, my reaction already was like, all right, cool. Because if it's the other, like, that's a little bit more. We got to get some therapists involved and that kind of thing. I was already suppressing. I didn't mean to. But naturally, my head was just kind of like, yeah, because that seems like a different deal. I mean, that alone, I was thinking, like, it's funny. I thought about the cost of it. Like, oh, what's this going to cost me? What's it going to cost? And it's funny, as I sat there and again was just like, wow, are you really applying a value to the identity of your child? The answer to that was like, yeah, it was. I did for a hot second. And then I can tell you right now, like, I'd sell my house if that's what it took. Right? We're not talking about the discussion at home. His mother and I don't sit and talk about this like if we're about to invest in a travel league lacrosse team. Right? We're not talking about, are we going to make that kind of investment in this? Is this going to stick? Right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, in our scenario, what we do consider life and death and just the health of this child. Wes has opened my eyes up to where I think we can all literally say nowadays that, like, mental health is something some people consider like a crisis in our country, able to find support or whatever. And I think 30 or 40 years ago, sorry, gentlemen, women, as far back as I can go. But if I go 30 or 40 years back and I think about how mental health was such a taboo topic, 40 years ago, and a friend of mine said, like, if I bumped into a friend and they were like, dude, you should see this therapist, I'm saying, I might have punched them in the mouth. Right? Just how insulting. Nowadays, we do start conversations like that, and I'm thankful for it. Oh my God, you found someone? Like, do they have times? Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, got it, it's mine. Like, I'll take it. Right? Like, you're laughing because you all know what I'm talking about. And I think about, in this situation, can I have my hand back? 30, 40 years ago, had we not looked at that and mental health the same way, where would we be today? We have an opportunity here to do this with gender affirming care. and other care that's in the bill as well. But I got one thing that I'm thinking about. And that's where I see us, like right now, we are on a threshold where we can do something and we can avoid 30 to 40 years of people suffering because we just did something about it now. And we're going to need it. And I'll bet 30 or 40 years, I'll bet 50 years ago, there was some psychologist and therapist was saying like, we are going to need help. And there are people going like, we're fine, let's suck it up, rub some dirt on it. Concussion, whatever, get back in the game. Right? We've learned a lot of things over the years as far as our health goes. And that's one of the parallels I would draw is to mental health. And that's not to say that this is a mental health issue. I'm just saying like exploring that and not making something that's taboo is where I that's what I see as the opportunity today. I don't do this lightly as well. I'll tell you again, I'm almost 50. I have a trans son, wasn't expecting that, married, divorced. We have a stepdaughter, another son, a younger son. Equally to, as far as the natural aspect of this, take this for what it's worth. I was raised in a very religious household, church every Sunday. It was just something we did. It wasn't even a question, we just went. That's what we did, right? Christian household. And I'm pretty sure if I look back into the doctrine I was raised on it. Scripture studied up, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure if I look in the doctrine, there is nothing that is going to indicate anything but, and I'm going to paraphrase, I'm not being critical, but I laugh at myself when I think of like where we're at today, that I could sit and think like, I'm not going to find any sort of writing that may indicate that he may not be considered like an abomination against God. But what's funny to me is even though I found that I can't escape some of that religious upbringing I have, I often think to my God, even if I tell myself I'm not going to, I will judge a lot of things based on what is right and what is wrong. Not once did I question this. If my kids steal something, which they don't, I'll worry about their like eternal salvation. I'd love to tell you that I just wish they don't get in trouble, but I know deep down there is that in my being. This, not a second, because I just saw it and I knew it's right. I've got nothing to support it in that regard, but I know it's right. And I'm just basing that off of years of, I don't like to call it conditioning, of just being raised that way. And I find that very interesting because it's something that I cannot escape. And so I share that. Not to persuade you in your own affiliation, but just to give you a perspective that like I myself have thought about that. Anyway, I think that's all that I can really share that perspective too. And thank you for your time.
Thank you both so much for your time coming down here. School, although it is Wednesday, right? So I think you got out early.
Yeah, you get out early.
Still might have missed a little bit, and for your time away, I'm very, very grateful. We sit and we have a 27-page bill in front of us with a lot of words on it that we hear a lot of testimony on, and we have to work our way through. And I'm not sure any of us at this table are lawyers, so our lawyers help us, but it's really helpful to hear the stories from the people who may be impacted by legislation that we do. So I'm very, very thankful to both of you. Do you mind opening up to questions if there are any?
Of course.
Knock yourself out.
Hi, Wes.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. So I was wondering, you're 18?
I am 18.
Are you a senior this year?
I am a senior.
So I'm guessing that you might be thinking about where you want to go in your future.
Yes, I do think about my future a lot. Next year, I will be attending CCV for just a year. I'm not really sure if I want to pursue college just yet. And so the cheapest option, I believe, is the best option, at least
Yeah.
for the first year, and then I can just transfer out if needed. One of my favorite teachers once told me that they don't look at where you started, they look at where you ended. And so if that means that I have to start at CCV and somewhere great, then that's totally fine by me because it's way cheaper.
I was just wondering if playing into your considerations at all. First of all, the CCV option, I banged out all my prerequisites at CCV. Very smart. I'm just wondering if you're looking at other states and whether or not this is something that you have to take into consideration.
It is.
From where you go in your future.
Yeah, my safety and my future is a big concern, especially where I choose to move. And unfortunately, places are really expensive to live in, and it's hard to get the care that I need in some certain places. But as of right now, although God, I hate the cold weather here, I plan on continuing the future that I have here in the state of Vermont for about as long as I can until I decide that Florida might be probably the best place to go to get out of here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just going to put a pitch in for Vermont, because we need workers. So
I'll leave anytime soon.
Good.
And it's getting hotter.
Nice and 78 on Thursday.
Art.
I had a question for Lance. When you were going through this, did you had to approve all these things that your son went through to change sex? I mean, how were you involved?
How involved? As much as I wanted to be, I would say, and equally.
But he couldn't do it on his own, could he?
No, and he's 18 now.
Now,
So
I was different.
yes.
But I mean before.
Prior to that, I would say, especially when what's the name of the program that don't fault me for having lapses of memory like this.
It's no big deal what it was.
It's the UVM Trans Health Clinic.
As he went through this, what I was seeing almost as a program, because there were steps and stages, I was always reached out, there. There was no meetings that were happening without my awareness. So if I decided no, you got this one, you're just talking about scheduling anyway, or if it was, no, I'm there and there would be times when Wes would be out of the room and they would have me and kind of break some things down to me. But never did I feel like anything that wasn't made aware, or that I didn't have the right to just. I could have pulled the plug and just been like, it's way too much for me right now, and I got to walk.
I just wonder how much a parent is involved in these procedures, because to me they should be until the age of 18. So I'm just trying to get a sense of that, and also I wonder how long do these treatments go for life?
The testosterone replacement and hormone replacement therapy I will have to take for the rest of my life.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Brian?
Hi, so I'm Brian Chena from Burlington, and I have a few questions. I just so you know, I'm a clinical social worker, and I do work with youth who are trans. But I'm asking you this about, I know what the practice is, but I'm asking so you can share what your experience was in the system, just so that we hear that direct perspective. So along the way, and did you feel like people did informed consent, that they were really clear, what the benefits and risks were along the way, and so that's to Wes to start.
Yes, I think I have almost all of the benefits and risks memorized. It's kind of pounded into me as I go. So yes, it was extremely informative.
And then this kind of involves both Wes, and I don't remember your name, Deb.
Yes.
Lance. I prioritized Wes, obviously, but I'll try to remember.
He did dress up better than me.
And as a therapist, the client is centered. So I usually say dad or mom or parent or whatever. So all right. So Lance, you could also answer this. To what involvement were parents involved in decisions? Even though I understand under law what the consent ages are for different treatments. What was your experience with different providers trying to involve your family and work through the family stuff with you?
So we started with UVM and we kept with UVM. And I started this process, like I said, when I was 16. So being older, it was, I'm not going to say more relaxed, but they needed all of my parents' consent still, but it wasn't like I was, 14, 13. And at every single appointment, just like he said, that wasn't, scheduling for more or just a regular checkup. My parents were present, either both or one of them were involved, and they did have to say, yes, this is something we can do for our child, and they would have to then continue to say yes. There was no point in time where I was solely making a decision until last November when I turned 18.
And then, I just want to say that if any of my questions are too much, you don't have to answer, but I think it's important because we hear all kinds of things from people who don't have lived experience. So I'd like you to share what your actual experience was, that along the way, did any adults ever try to steer you one way or the other? You don't have to say who, but do you feel like adults and Lance, I think you already acknowledged as a parent that parents do that because of the culture,
I did.
Yeah. So I want to honor that you said that, but I'm just thinking others like teachers, doctors, therapists, that people like you should do this or you should do that or pushing you one way or the other. Just because we've heard a lot about that, those kind of accusations.
No, in my experience, I was never pushed one way or the other. I have only ever had people in my life, when I tell them I am a man, only say, okay, you are a man. Nobody has ever really told me in either a professional setting or a setting like this or in school, anywhere, that no, you are a woman. I've never gotten anything like that, and nobody trying to persuade me to transition, nobody forcing me, nothing weird like that. And any therapist that I've ever had has also been the same way. If I feel like, when I told my therapist, I feel like this is what this is, she did not say oh, then this is what you are. She said, let's talk about this. Let us unpack this and figure it out, because if it then is the wrong choice, and I told you I know the risk factors of starting testosterone, and what happens if I do then feel that this is not right. It was all informative, and I knew all of those things, and nobody pushed me one way or the other.
Thank you.
I want to comment on those, but too. To one of the first questions, I still in my bedroom closet have this nice little, not even a spreadsheet guy, actually don't like spreadsheets, but there's a nice little table chart that was made in Excel, I could tell, that had the this happens, it happens here. It just all, especially with testosterone alone, I had it all right in front of me, and I could see how long it would take for something to take effect, what was irreversible. It was so basic. And I walked out of that thing cherishing it, because it was oh my gosh, it's so right in front of me. So I actually felt as a parent that it was very clear to me, and made very clear of, this is what some of these treatments will do. This is what they won't do. This is what's forever. And these are things that we actually don't know, and that's medicine for you too. On the other side, though, I don't think I ever witnessed anything. I mentioned how I probably influenced. That's a very interesting sort of concept, though, as I sit and think often about the influence. Again, it's you will warp your mind if you start thinking about, if someone is well, did anyone influence Wes to do this? And I would say well, no, but nobody cared when we influenced him to be a woman for 14 years. That was driving him to try to kill himself. So yeah, I'm not worried if someone in the past couple of years was have you ever thought if you were a dude? People don't need to freak out about that. I would say kind of wish maybe someone had asked that question sooner. Right? That's where we're at. We don't mind the other side of it, but we do. This is a perspective I've gained in the last couple of years, obviously, not very quickly. And it reminds me when early on, when he was 11, 12, and the changes were starting, and people were well, how do you know? I get that question from parents, and after a while, I kind of loved it, because I would sit there and be well, how do you know that your 14 or 13-year-old son, or how do you know your 13-year-old son likes girls? They're well, and just be when was the last time you had a conversation with your teenager about their sexual desires? Never. You've never had that conversation with them. they're not going to talk about that. And I sit there, people would be like, well, how does he know? I'd be like, I don't know. You know, like, if it was in the opposite, I wouldn't be able to figure that out. Because if he liked dudes, I'd sit there and be like, I don't understand that. Because I don't like guys like that. So anyway, the answer to your question, though, is it's not an answer as much as I sometimes ask back. I'm not trying to insult people, but I would say, like, is there a time that's too soon to ask that question? It's hard. Please do not let that warp what this bill is about. Okay, this bill should be about protecting people's health, and it has protected my son's health. He is alive because of the health care he gets now. And if we can protect that, I would really, really like that. And I think about all the other people, not just children in the state, that need that. If you want to think about it philosophically, outside of that, though, I would say, like, there is some deep thinking that you can do about what is right or what is wrong or when the right timing is. Anyway.
Thanks.
Thank you. Daisy, and then Topper.
I can't thank you both enough for coming in and sharing your story with us. And you talk about saving lives, and I think just opening up and being willing to be so candid with us is saving lives. So thank you very much. I'm curious, Wes, as a parent with kids myself in school, if you'd be willing to share a little bit about any support. I don't know if you went to public school, but can you share a little bit about any support that you've got from school staff, whether it was school nurses, teachers, or whatever, in terms of either mental health or if your school had any school nurses or anything, or mental health supports? Were you supported at all?
Extremely. I'm very fortunate that the Essex district, that they were accommodating and they were very willing to help me. Outside of like transitioning and whatnot, the nurses there would help me or help any student if you were having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, which used to happen quite often. And they would give me a quiet space to just relax. And my counselor, Nicole Gillis at EHS, is probably one of the best counselors that I think I have ever met in my entire life. She is quick to reply, and she has always been there for me. She set me up with a therapist who worked through the Howard Center, who worked inside the high school, which was extremely convenient for her to just be there when I needed to see her. And so I got amazing support and mental health counseling throughout middle school and then into high school.
When the automated voice system let me know that he was skipping school one day and they used the name Wes, like that first school year, that actually impressed me quite a bit. The Essex School District might have been the first sort of institution that just took that, made the change edit done in the system.
And that was, that was a process that didn't really even take that much time. It was me speaking to a principal that I felt comfortable with and my counselor and saying, you know, this is the name that I would like to go by. These are the pronouns that I would like to go by. And they said, okay, we'll talk to IT. And within the next day in Power School, which is what we use for our grades, attendance, literally everything, it was done.
Small thing, but thing nonetheless.
That's a big thing. Topper?
Wes, thanks so much for coming in and having the courage to do this. And your dad too. I only have one question. Do you feel that you're getting enough support and help now as you sit here today? Or is there more things that you think
I think
benefit from?
I think I currently am getting probably more support than I need at this point now that I'm 18 and I want to kind of like branch away. Other than from him, obviously, but teachers, staff, my own therapist, I have plenty of support. I think when I was younger in those earlier stages, that when kids start to bring up these ideas that I think I am this, I think this is happening, is when there should be then more support when they need it. Because there were times where I had the support, obviously, but it wasn't that I could, I couldn't contact my school counselor over break. He couldn't get back to me during that time, stuff like that. But at this point in time right now, I feel that I have plenty of support that I need.
So you're comfortable.
Very, extremely. If I wasn't comfortable, I wouldn't be here in this room today.
Yeah. Dad, same question to you. Your needs. Are you okay now?
I'm okay. And I like that when there's people I can call. I just don't have many questions. Like, I don't want to say I'm along for the ride. I don't want to make it seem like I'm an absent parent. I just don't see anything wrong. And I mean, we had some insurance things that came up recently, and Wes and I talked about it too, in terms of, I was just throwing out there, like, I may ask you at some point if we find out one, like whichever plan I'm on, I'm like, I might ask you to wait 8 months. So when I re-enroll, I can go on this plan, whatever. But that was something I was equally telling. I was like, well, if we get to that, we'll talk about it then, and if you absolutely cannot wait for X, Y, or Z, like, I get it. But again, that's just how my head works. But I'm just a father that's happy that his son is doing well.
And there's probably a bunch of other people that may be in the same position. And my question is, do you feel comfortable enough to be, like you did here today, to talk to other dads and moms about this?
100%.
Do you do it?
Do I? Not on a organized sort of level by any means.
So,
But I try to let
do you
people.
think that would be helpful? If some other, like support groups were set up?
100%. Again, that I know on a personal level, sorry, I'm not trying to take your time. On a personal level as a father, I know that I think things through in a very sort of unique way sometimes. I do that a lot with myself very internally, but I know other people tend to need to talk it through or communicate. And again, the one thing I can at least give people is a perspective in helping them understand. And especially, like I would say, one of the first things that I found is that as a parent, accepting is that once you understand what is going on, I think it's only inevitable that you will find yourself sort of like in your kitchen one night doing the dishes, and all of a sudden it'll seep in, and you're going to go through a little point of guilt. Once you understand, I don't want to say accept, once you've accepted what's happening and you know what is real, your reality is going to all of a sudden sort of blow up. And having some help, and if someone ever had to call me and just even ask or express how bad they were feeling, I would say, yep, but you didn't know. So anyways, yes, I think it would help. Sorry.
All right, I appreciate that. I know the reason I asked you that question is when I went through cancer treatment, I know it's nothing to do with this, but I found it very rewarding to help other people that were going through the same situation that I did. And I don't know whether it would be helpful to you or not, but I'm sure as hell know one thing, that if I was a dad and I was presented with this, and I know there was a journey that we were going to have to take together, I'd like somebody that been through it to talk to me about it. So.
Well, thank you. Well, and not like I would ever be the first, but I think what you're just kind of reminding me and pointing out that this is so new that we're even willing to talk about these kind of things, that, yeah, there probably is no group out there because it just hasn't thought to form it yet. But I do understand. I agree with you.
I have a question that a slight takeoff of Toppers. And I know you said you started at the UBM organization, but did you ever feel that there were barriers to your care, or do you know of others that might be in a similar situation as a youth in Vermont that they just can't get the help that they are seeking?
I would not call them barriers, I'd call them hoops. You jump through hoops. Barriers are really hard to get through, but hoops you just have to jump through. And there were certain hoops we had to jump through. Like now, insurance was a hoop that we had to jump through when trying to get top surgery. And I'm very thankful and very lucky that we got through that hoop, and now it's scheduled and ready to go. But like just first starting out, they have rules, very rightfully so. You have to at least have a year of therapy, and you have to have somebody sign off to say that you can do this. It's not only my family involved, but these are other people involved. I had to have a letter of support written in order to start testosterone. And that was a hoop, but it was a hoop worth jumping through. And I think for some trans youth, it is like, I want this right now, that then it feels like a barrier. And I can say that at that point in time when I was 16 and I wanted to start more than anything else in the world, it was a barrier. And now that I'm 18 and I am older and I can, reflect and realize that it was just a hoop. And that's all it ever will be. And I will continue to have to jump through hoops in my life, but that is all they ever will be.
Thank you. I think Brian has one more and then we're gonna.
I just wanted to thank you again for coming in, because there's nothing that compares to a person sharing the direct experience that they go through. And it really is important when other people proclaim that they know, to counter that with people who actually have lived through and been through the system. So thanks.
Of course.
And I just want to say, I have a 14-year-old son, and I can only hope that he is as amazing as you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was our privilege.
Commend you
We can
both.
go